Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today on the Classic Mini DIY Christmas Special. Today and over the next few weeks, I'm going to be releasing some videos that kind of outline exactly how to buy your own Classic Mini Cooper. Now, I've gotten a lot of requests for this. A lot of people want to know, well, what do I need to look for? What are the problems that often happen on these cars, and what else is there to these cars more than just what's on the surface? And I'd like to go into some detail over the course of a few episodes and show you guys exactly what you need to look for when you're purchasing your own Mini. Now, before you go out and buy your own car, before you get into all the nitty-gritty, everything else, let's talk about some of the main things that you're going to want to think about before you purchase a Mini. Really, the biggest question is, what do I want this car for? If you're looking for something that's going to be super reliable, something that you're going to be able to just get in, drive, get out, not do much work to, general maintenance, Mini's probably not right for you. These cars do require regular maintenance and will require some care that's a little bit above and beyond what a modern car would need. Now, there's a preconception that Minis inherently are extremely expensive to own, are going to constantly be draining your checkbook, and while this can be true for some people, the main reason that that happens is because most people who own a Mini just love to add things, love to change things, love to update their cars and have a lot of fun with them. So if you're kind of one of those people, you can anticipate spending a little bit of extra money on the car, but if you're only wanting to repair it, just drive it, enjoy it the way it is, you're not going to spend gobs and gobs of money. So the other thing is, what's the Mini going to offer you that's better than another classic car out there, or than any other car really on the road? And the Mini is not the fastest car on the road, it's not the most reliable car on the road, but it is the most fun, in my opinion. This car is the king of the back roads. You're going to hit every corner. It's going to be like a cat on Velcro. This thing just sticks to the ground. You have a ton of fun driving this thing. You can hit the autocross tracks, really stomp on some Miatas or some newer cars, which is a lot of fun. But the car itself is not extremely fast. The engine is not crazy powerful. The transmission is kind of frustrating. But you end up with this car that's just tons and tons of fun. You're not going to be in a situation where you won't have a smile on your face when you're driving this car. Alright, so if you've answered both of those questions yes, that you want to have a Mini, you know that it's going to be a lot of fun, and you're totally comfortable with putting a little extra work in and making sure it stays maintained, then let's go ahead and move on to the nitty-gritty items. Now, things I'm going to cover in this video, in the part 1 video here, are kind of the history of the Mini and the bodywork items that you're going to want to take a look at right when you get there, right when you start looking at a car that you're kind of thinking about buying. Now, the cool thing about the Mini is it's one of the longest production model cars that's ever existed. It was produced from 1959 all the way up until the year 2000. That's crazy. There aren't many other cars out there that can say that they were in production that long. Now, as you can imagine, there's lots of different generations of this car over that long production period. There's actually 7 different generations of this car. And I'm going to go into kind of some of the high-level details about these cars. There are so many things that changed over the years that I'd be here all day if you wanted me to go through everything. But from 59 to 69, you have the Mark I Mini. This is the first one. And it only really came in an 850cc motor, which was extremely small, but it was perfect for those city drives and the speeds that you were going in the city. Now, one of the things that is traditionally a Mark I feature are external hinges on your car doors, which means that the hinges the doors actually open with were mounted on the exterior of your car. Move on to Mark II, and that's from 67 to 69, and now there is a little overlap there. They actually started making the Mark IIs while the Mark Is were still in production. And this kind of happened because there were so many different companies with British Motoring Company that were building these cars that you get some overlap, you get some weirdness, not as much brand continuity as you see in modern cars. But in the Mark IIs, what ended up happening is they moved those hinges to the inside of the doors. The exterior hinges are actually kind of a pain in the butt. They break a lot, they kind of sag over time, and once they move them inside the car, it ended up being a lot more efficient. And as you probably imagine, you can see on newer cars, there aren't external hinges anymore. Next, we have the Mark III. Didn't change a whole lot from the Mark II, but that was from 69 until 76. And then we had the Mark IV from 76 to 84, Mark V from 84 to 92. And all these generations had subtle differences, but they were pretty much the same. They started introducing bigger motors though. So you ended up with 850cc, 1100, 1000cc, and a 1275. Now the 1275 is kind of the motor that most people want because it is the biggest motor. You're going to get the most power out of it. As a lot of people say here in the US, there's no replacement for displacement. And that's definitely true for the Mini as well as most other cars built in this time period. Now we move into the Mark VI next, which was in production from 1991 until 99. Now this is where things start to change up a little bit in those motors. You know, we still have the different sizes that were available before. However, what they're selling now is a fuel-injected motor. So the motor is actually the same from the cylinder head down, but the top piece, the cylinder head, now came with an injection head, and it was actually a fuel-injected motor, which is really cool. It was more modern. Obviously in the 90s, things were starting to shift up. More things were moving to fuel injection, and it was just more efficient. And then finally we have the Mark VII, which was from 96 to 2000, and that introduced all sorts of new safety stuff. It was actually the last Mini that really got produced, that rolled off the line. And they introduced airbags, multi-point injection, and all sorts of other stuff to kind of meet newer safety laws. But at that point, they realized that they couldn't bring this Mini any further into the future. The safety standards were getting too strict, and the Mini was just not safe enough. So depending on where you live in the world, there are import rules that are all different. And I'm going to kind of focus on the US import rules. I'm not going to go into too much detail about them, but you should definitely check out these import laws before you go buying a Mini, anywhere really. But in the US, we have a rule that you can't import a car that's less than 25 years old. And they say that it's because of emissions and safety standards, things like that. It's kind of an archaic, arbitrary rule in my opinion. These cars are going to be driven somewhere, and they're going to make it over to the US one way or the other. Now, a lot of people do something called reinventing the car, and you'll encounter this a lot in the British car world. Land Rovers, Minis, less so with the MGs and the Austin Healey's because they were sold in the US pretty extensively. But especially with the Minis and Land Rovers, people will purchase and import a car that was built in 1999, 95, in the later 80s, and they'll take that car, bring it over here, and put a VIN number on it that is associated with an older car. So you end up with a 71 Mini or a 65 Mini. And it's really important that you know this when you're looking at cars. If you see something that's fuel injected, that has single point injection, multi-point injection, if it has airbags, it almost definitely is newer than 91. And it's very important that you keep that in mind, because if you do buy one of those cars, there is a risk and there is always potential for Border Control to be able to seize that car. It's completely within their rights and grounds associated with the laws here in the United States to seize that car, and they don't send those cars back. They actually crush those cars. So it's something that you just want to think about. You might want to stick with an older car if you want to run into less problems with your DMV and any other laws that are here in the US, or just wait until that car is available to import and it's older than 25 years old. Alright, so moving forward, the main things that we're going to cover in this buyer's guide are the bodywork, the engine, the transmission, the front and rear axles, the subframe, the electrics, and the interior of your car. These things are going to cover the major items that will be going wrong in your car. I also do want to go over the exhaust a little bit, but that's pretty self-explanatory. I just want to show you guys exactly what you're looking for on these cars, the things that can break the most. So let's go ahead and head out to the car, and I'll show you the main points on the body where you can see most damage happens, most things are going to be going wrong. So let's head out there.
So the first thing that you're going to want to look at is the area around the turn signal, the seam that connects your bumper to the body of your car, the area around your headlight, and then you're going to want to look along this channel here to make sure that there's no rust in that channel. In addition, you'll see this area right here where your fender connects to the body of your car. This is one of the most common places for rust, and you'll see bubbling and general discoloring and problems around there if there is rust. Now the next place you're going to want to look for rust and corrosion is underneath this bumper here. The bumper itself is actually hollow, so you're going to end up with issues with rust and corrosion underneath. In addition, you should check the mounting brackets of that bumper. Now moving onto the side of the car, you'll see this triangular shaped area on the side of your car right before the door. This area right here is actually pretty prone to rust, and you'll see a lot of rust happening down in the bottom corner and in this top section right above the hinges. Now, in addition to that, you'll see a lot of rust around the fender flares and in the wheel well itself. Now, while we're on the topic of the wheel well, you should go ahead and take a look at all of the wheel wells on the car. Go ahead and feel them out, make sure that there's no excessive corrosion or any damage in the bottoms of those wheel wells. Now, on the bottom side of your car here, you'll see the sill area, and this wraps around all the way around the door. You're going to want to check that to make sure there's no corrosion. And then in addition, you're going to want to take a look at this bottom sill right here. That seam is very prone to corrosion, and that bottom sill often has rust holes in it. Now, if you have a Mark I Mini, you're also going to want to take a look at these external hinges. As you can see, they're very prone to bubbling and rusting around the mounts. In addition, this post here can actually be replaced pretty easily if they're sagging. They also offer a replacement aluminum part to replace the brass originals that are on these cars already. Now, the next thing we're looking at here is the roof gutter. Now, if there's a lot of rust in this roof gutter or around that little hole there where the gutter extends and lets all the water out, you're going to want to take a hard look at the car and decide whether or not you want it. Roof damage is very difficult to repair and often requires a great deal of metal work. Now, as far as the doors go, you're going to want to check around the windows here. A lot of water likes to collect in these channels, as well as checking all the bright work to make sure that the chrome's still looking good, and along this bottom sill here. These windows are often prone to getting rust and damage, however replacing doors is quite easy. Now, moving on to the boot of the car, you're going to want to take a look around the whole boot lid opening, make sure there's no rust, check this rear parcel shelf for any damage or holes, and then check all of the weather seal to make sure that exists and that there's no damage at the bottom of the boot lid. Now, the actual door of the boot is often overlooked, but this sill right here is actually quite delicate and often can produce rust and corrosion all throughout the door sill. So you're just going to want to take a look at all of it from the inside here and make sure that you don't see any excessive rust. Now, the last thing we're looking at here is the rear quarter panel of your Mini. This area is prone to rust as well. However, if there is damage to this section, if there's holes, if there's any soft spots, anything around this sill that's overly damaged, it's going to be very difficult to repair and will be a pretty big job to actually get it fixed.
All right, that's it for part 1 of the Mini Buyer's Guide. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments section below. Big thanks to 7 Enterprise. They are sponsoring my channel and they have helped me bring these videos to more and more people. Check out their Mini parts. They sell lots of really cool stuff that will look great on your Mini, that will help your Mini run better. Definitely check them out. They're awesome. Otherwise, enjoy your Christmas, enjoy the new year, and I will see y'all next year with a new video.